Hello guys and welcome back. Today we are going to be looking at DOM manipulation basis. What is actually a DOM in JavaScript? DOM simply stands for document object model. This enables us to be able to interact with our HTML pages. Now let me just explain this before we move further. Let's assume we have our HTML pages like this, and normally our HTML are always containing tags, right? With the HTML being the head, right? Having this HTML have a child called head and body, meaning this HTML tag has two child called head and body. While head also has child called meta and title. Body also has a child called script, and it can also have a child called h1. So this is a basic JavaScript, right? But with the ability of JavaScript, it enables us to turn this into a node list that enable us to be able to access everything here, to change it, to just do anything we can do with the HTML elements. So let's get started. By the time we start doing something, you understand what I'm trying to say. So the first thing we want to do is finding an element. Yes, finding an element. So I will remove this so that it won't distract us. We want to concentrate on these two. Let's say, for example, this is my HTML file, and I want to find this element inside the HTML file. I can decide to find it in three ways. But for me to find it, I will create a variable called then I will just say I want to find an heading, right? So I will name it heading. And to find it, I use what we call document, then dot. There are many ways to do it. It's either we can, for to find it, we use the get method. We want to get it. So I can say dot get element. We want to get the element. We can either get it by the ID, the class name, by the name, or the tag name. So I'll be using the tag name this time around. Then I will specify what's the tag name, h1. Look at this. This is an HTML tag, don't forget. So the tag name is h1. So I'll be getting the heading using the tag name. So I can decide to go into my console and say log into the console. Log into the console heading dot inner text, meaning I want to check what is inside this heading tag. Then once I go into my browser and reload, it's showing undefined. And let's see inner HTML. Let's see what's actually happening. Still undefined. Okay, I think I've gotten the issue. The issue is these properties does not return anything. It sets something, doesn't return. So let's just log the heading alone. Let's see. Yes, the heading shows an HTML tag, which is an h1. Now we can easily do something with this h1. We can say okay, heading dot inner text, meaning we want to change the text inside the heading to this is a new heading text. Once I save it, I don't really need this. So once I save it and refresh it, okay. Yes, it wasn't changing the text earlier on, so I finally fixed it. And this is the issue. Remember, when we are trying to find this element, we use what we know as tag name. And this tag name, instead of getting single element for us, it gets the element inside array. It assumes that the HTML pages that we are looking for might contain more than one H1, which is definitely true. Imagine building a website. You might not have just single H1, you might have a lot of H1. So it takes them into an array. So, but we are only interested in the very first H1 that it will come across in the document. So I now put this specifying the first one. Remember, to get the first element in an array, the first has an index of 0. So once I change the heading inner text, that is the text inside of the heading, and I change it to this a new text, then it will be able to change. And that's how we manipulate the DOM. And remember, in the beginning of the video, I tried to log into the console, the heading dot inner text, right, which it wasn't showing. Well, I was confused, but I actually got it right. And if I try to reload it now, you can see the first value was hello DOM, but the next thing we change it to, this is a new heading text. All right, another way that we can find an element apart from using tag name is by ID. Get elements by ID. Yes, this only gets a single element because it is showing get element, not get elements. Are we following? So imagine I change this, I give this my H1, or no, let me just create a new paragraph and say this is a simple paragraph. Then I give it an ID of demo. Then let me say I give it a class of new P. Let's just do it like that. Then I grab that text, that element using the ID. I can decide is a paragraph. Just forget this. I can decide to change it or leave it the same way. Now by doing this, I've already gotten hold of the P tag. But now I'm not getting it using the tag name, but what? The ID. So I can just change it. I can just go to my browser and reload. You see, it was a simple paragraph before, now it is a new paragraph text, and which was updated for us, right? Another way you can get hold of an element is we can get by their class name, but this will return, getting element by class name will return an array just like the tag, because it will get all the elements that have similar classes. So if I say new P, it will get a lot of elements. For me to get the first one, I'll just put 0, right? But one of the unique way you will see on the web in which they get elements is by using the query selector. If I say document.querySelector, this query selector will return a single element. But if I use selector all, will return an array of elements. Not to use query selector. This query selector collects either the ID or the class. Remember, whenever you want to style a element in CSS, to get the ID in the CSS file, we use what we know as hash, right? Hash, then the name of the ID. Same thing this query selector does. It will take the hash if it's an ID, or if it's a class, it takes dot. So since this is an ID, I'll just say ID, save it, and do the same thing. You see, nothing is changing because everything is still the same. So same thing, to get an element by the class, we use dot, the name of the class, which is the new p, right? If you check this paragraph, the class name is new p, but you have to add the dot to it. Without the dot, let's look at what will happen. Nothing is actually happening, and it says there's an error reading an inner text because it doesn't recognize this inner text anymore, because this heading is no more an element anymore, and the paragraph just remains this is a simple paragraph. But by adding the dot, you can see how everything return back to how it was. Yes, so that's simply how to find an element using the DOM. So I'll be commenting this out, and we've also seen how we change elements, right? Yes, we've seen how we change elements. We've changed the element of the paragraph, we've changed the element, but apart from changing elements, we can also change the attribute of an element. Now let me go to my HTML file and let me just create an element called image, and I say the source for this image is default.js. Then let me just, not js, rather img. Then let me give it an id, called an id of image. Sorry, let me just put it here, id called image, right? Then let me find an image from my file and just put it there. Let me copy this image and put it inside this place, so that then let me copy the name. Let me just copy the name and add it, so that I can just add a real image instead of, yes, what's this? Okay, once I save this and head over to my browser, I will see the image already in my browser, right? So I can use the DOM by getting this image. You can say const img by creating a variable called image, and I say document.querySelector. I love using querySelector, but since we have an id, so I will just get the element by id called image. The id is image, right? I can log to the console and say, okay, the image dot, I want to see the socks. Sorry, the socks. Once I refresh, you can see it takes me to where the image socks, that is the image file, is the link to the image, and I can easily change this. Let me find another image. Let me find another image. Let me just take this image and also add it to it, and this image is called 11122.jpg, right? So that means I can easily change this image from being this to another image using my JavaScript. I can say, okay, instead of console logging the this thing, let me just image just SRS equal to, then I will specify the name of the next image, that's 11122.jpg. and once I save this and I reload the browser, you notice how it will change. Yes, it changed to the image automatically. So you doesn't only change in JavaScript, you don't only change the text inside the tags, you also change their attribute also. This means, I can easily change the attribute of any attribute, maybe the alt, the id, the source, anything, you can actually change it. And another thing you can change is also the style. Let's say, for example, I want to give this paragraph a color of red. So to do that, I'll first get the paragraph. Let me just name it P, right? And I've gotten hold of it using this query selector, right? I can now say P dot styles dot, then what style did I want to change? Color. I will now say equal to, what color did I want to give it? Red. Once I save this and reload, let's see what we have. Okay, there's an error here, cannot set property of undefined. Let's see why we're having something like this. Okay, I think probably I made mistake just using styles. Let me reload. Yes, it's supposed to be style instead of styles. So you can see simply by using that, we've changed the color to red. So you can change the style of any. You can even decide to change the background. I can say p dot style dot background color. But in JavaScript use what we know as camel casing. That is, the first letter is always small, then subsequent letter starts with capital letter, like this. So to specify background color, I'll say background color like this. Instead of just writing everything in plain, I can say let the background color be green. Then once I reload, you can see how the background color has changed to green. You will have noticed the camel casing. If you look at this inner text also, it's a camel casing. The first is small letter, then subsequent words will be capitalized. Are we following? Yes. Then that's how to change the elements in JavaScript. Now let's move on. How do we delete and add elements? Okay, how do we delete and add elements? Now to learn about that, let me create a div here. I'll create a div called with an ID with a class called container. Yes, this is a div called container. Then I will find it here by saying const my div is equal to document dot, let me use query selector, then dot container. Yes, I've gotten hold of this. Then I can say div, I want to add a new element inside this div element. You may notice there's nothing inside it, right? I want to add another element like a paragraph or an heading. But I want to add an heading. So to do that, I will just go save this and go into my this. I will create another element called const. Let me create another element called heading 5. I can say document dot create element. And what element did I want to create? You asked me for the tag name. What do I want to create? I want to create an h5, right? Yes. Then I've created the element. Then I will now use this div. I will now say this div dot append child. That is, I want to add this h5 element as a child inside this div. So once I save this and I head back to my browser and I reload, nothing will actually happen because we only created the h5. There is nothing in the h5 yet. But if I go through elements in my browser and I scroll, you notice I'll have a div here, and inside this div I have an h5 which I created using JavaScript. So I can decide to add something, h5.inner text. You can use inner text or inner HTML. I'll be explaining the difference right very soon. Inner text, I'll just say heading 5 and save. Let's see. So once I refresh this, let's scroll down. This is it here. The image is kind of blocking it. So since we are done with the image, I can just comment that out. Once I comment it out, then since I'm done with the image, let me comment that out also. So that's how to create an element. Now, what is the difference between inner text? What if I use inner HTML? Yes, it will give me the same thing. Nothing will change. But the difference is that once you are using inner text, anything you are putting here must be a text. But once you are using inner HTML, even though you add an HTML tag here, it will convert that HTML tag to a normal HTML tag. What am I saying? Let's say I say inner text, then I try to create a p tag like this, and a p tag like this, and I save, and I go to my browser, refresh. Look at how it came with the tags. But imagine I use HTML. It will not include the tag this time around, but there's a p tag already added. You can say inside the h5 there's a p tag. So that's the basic difference about it. Now we've seen how we can add an element by using the append child. Yes. Alright. Also, for us to delete an element, we use what we know as remove child. I can say div dot remove child. So what's the child I want to remove? I want to remove what's it called? I want to remove the h5. Once I save and I refresh, yes, you can see the h5 is already gone. And if you check your element, you can see inside the div there's nothing in the div anymore. The h5 is already gone. And that's how to remove a child. And how do I access this HTML? If I want to access this HTML tag, if I want to access this HTML tag, it's different from others. Instead of saying document.querySelector this, no, this is how to access it. You say document.documentElement. This is specifying that you are referring to the HTML element. If I try to log it and I refresh, let me check my console, you can see it returns the HTML totally. Yes, but if I am only interested in just the body, so I can just say HTML.body and it will give me the body alone. Yes, and here is the body. So same thing, I can say HTML.head and it gives me the head tag. Yes, I hope we are following. So others, instead of using HTML.this, instead of saying HTML.p, HTML.this, it is advisable to say HTML. You can see it is showing undefined. It is advisable to find the tag by using this query selector or using their ID, their class, or their tag name. I hope this is. Also, you can decide to replace a child instead of removing it. Let's say inside my div here, I have an h5 which has already appended, right? So I can say, okay, div.replace. I want to replace child. I want to replace this h5. So it will take the new one and the old one. So the old child is h5, right? but the new child is a p tag that I want to replace it with. So let me create the p tag here by saying paragraph. Okay, let me just give it a name, just para, create element p. So I'll be replacing the h5 with the para. So it will take the new one I want to replace first, then followed by the old one. So once I save this, let me comment this out. Once I save this and I reload, once I go to my element, now you will see that the h5 is no more there, is the p tag that is there. And remember, I didn't add anything to the p tag. I did not say the para.innerHTML blah blah blah. So that's why it is empty. I hope this is understood. So this is basically the basis of DOM manipulation. There are many advanced things we can do, but I will stop here for now. In coming videos, we'll be learning more about DOM manipulation.